Hey everybody, my name's Dr. Jonathan Lopez, and I'm many things in life. One being a Marine Corps veteran, the other being a dad. That's the most important role I have. So I started this podcast to interview dads and just discuss different topics with experts in different industries and really tackle everything from fitness and fun to faith and finance. Tune in, like and subscribe, and we look forward to having you every week. Welcome to Rad Dad Podcast. Hey, welcome back, everybody, to the Rad Dad podcast. Happy belated Father's Day to all the dads out there. Today we have a great guest, good friend of mine, Allen Wright. He's a senior enterprise executive as well as an entrepreneur and a dad of two. He's got one about a year and a half, and the other is under 4 months.
Yeah, right at 4 months.
So, newborn, we're talking about a whole bunch of different topics that we usually talk about on the podcast, but we wanted to talk a little bit more about mental health.
Yeah.
And men taking care of that. So, Allen, go ahead and introduce yourself, cover anything I didn't cover.
Yeah, Jonathan, appreciate it. I'm glad to be here. As you mentioned, 2 kids, 2 under 2, so I'm in the absolute gauntlet at a phase in my life where we're just kind of keeping these things alive. But it's been an absolute blast. Happily married for almost 10 years now. So we waited a little bit to have kids, but it's been an awesome experience and happy to be here and happy to dive into this with you.
Great. Yeah. So, tell me how's the work-life balance, if you will, with having 2 kids under 2 or Irish twins, if you will. And how does that work with, you being a professional and an entrepreneur and Katie doing the same?
Yeah, absolutely. So my wife works full-time as well. She's a regional VP of sales, so I'm very proud of what she's been able to do. But the work-life balance, there really isn't work-life balance anymore. I think all of us have experienced that through the actual pandemic of how much it's shifted. So you can get responses to your emails from me at 5 in the morning or 10 o'clock at night or somewhere in between.
That's me.
I really prioritize my kids as much as possible with my work, and so they wake up about 6:30 every single morning, and we're there with them. I mean, we're spending our mornings with them. So my actual true kickoff on the day is kind of pushed back to probably about an 8:30ish, 9 o'clock, but it doesn't really end, and I think a lot of us, I think every professional these days is working around the clock 7 days a week kind of style thing, just to kind of stay up with everything. But having that prioritization of the kids and the change that they brought to life is a lot of fun, but it's a lot more work for sure.
Yeah, I think the other good thing with the pandemic is working from home. I know I got placed to work from home permanently. I wasn't thrilled about it. I'm an extroverted person. I like being around people, like being in an office. And probably the worst thing you could do to an extrovert is tell them to go home and not be around people.
Yeah.
So that was an adjustment for me. But the great thing is I can now literally work from anywhere doing sales. And next week we're going on vacation. We're going back to Hawaii, and I'll be working there.
Yeah.
Because we'll be 5-6 hours ahead. And I wouldn't have acclimated to the time zone yet. I've done it before. I'm shooting off emails at like 4 a.m. Hawaii time.
Yeah.
It's I know it's 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock here. I'm just like I'm working. It's good. It's work-life balance. Once I'm done for the day, and then we can enjoy the time, especially being 5-6 hours behind. But I think the pandemic showed us a lot of things. The things that were really wrong with our country and the things that were really, really right as well. So one of those, and I love to start the podcast off with this, one of my favorite memories of the whole pandemic, I think I've told you this before, and just now in general of my life, was we got done golfing one time, and we went over to your house. Augie had just been born, and we knew about this whole virus that was going around. And, washed her hands, got in there, got to meet Augie, and then Katie was like, "Do you want to hold him?"
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh, I don't need to wash my hands again or do all this other stuff."
Yeah.
It was a sense of normalcy during a time of chaos.
Yeah.
So to me, that's still something that centered me on coming back and being normal.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people that know me, I lived a pretty normal life during the pandemic. There wasn't a whole bunch of huge precautions. I was being careful, but not stupid. But I also wasn't being overly cautious.
Yeah.
And that's an opinion I'm allowed to have. Anyone can agree or disagree with it. It is still America.
Sure.
We can disagree on things. So one thing that we really connected on during the pandemic was we were both almost forced to work from home. And then we started working together at Tower Club. We'd be up there and just the interaction with people. Tell me a little bit about balancing, your life as a professional and having a corporation that you work for, as well as being an entrepreneur. And, how does all that mix up together? Because one of the things I've always admired about you is, you don't just focus on one thing. It's, hey, I want to be the best at this, but I also have an interest over here. And I mean, you started a trash company during the pandemic, which was genius.
Yeah, so I had a different viewpoint than a lot of people do because I've actually been virtual now for almost 10 years. So the work from home wasn't as much of a shift for me. It was more of a working from home full time, right? And when the pandemic was starting and everything was coming out, we actually hadn't even really told people that we were pregnant yet. So we found out January of 2020 and started telling people about March 2020. We got through the first trimester and then the whole world shut down. And so it was like an interesting balance that I had to take on of what in the world is actually happening. Like, how serious is this virus?
Sure.
Like what do we got to research? What do we got to read about? And of course, you've got so many polar opposite views. You got conspiracies to this is true science, this is bad science, this is real science. Like, what?
Wait, that happened?
Yeah. So you must not have turned on the internet at that time. But it was something that I had to take seriously because I've got a pregnant wife now, right? And so if this virus is serious and this is something that's going to impact the pregnancy and this is something that's going to impact my son long term, like, I've got to take this really serious. I mean, we went from washing cardboard boxes, right, and not being around
spraying
people.
down the Amazon boxes.
It was like it was mind blowing. And then you're sitting there, and as you know, I'm a very factual guy. I just want to see numbers. I want to see stats. I want to read through this. I want to see both opinions. I want to see the crazy left. I want to see the crazy right, and I want to form my opinion on what's going on. So it was something that we took very, very seriously, but at the same time, we knew we couldn't let it absolutely control us, right? And that was one of the things is despite what was going to happen, we had no idea how long it was going to last or how long we needed to stay reclused,
Wait, I thought it was supposed to be 15 days.
Yeah, it's just 15 days, right, to flatten that curve real fast. And so it was a different world, I mean, we had a very different experience during the pregnancy. There was no on-site classes. We're not going to parenting classes. We're doing it on Zoom with a lady out of Florida, which was the weirdest experience we'd ever done.
Well, anything out of Florida is pretty weird anyway, right?
Yeah. So that was interesting. But actually working from home and working from a virtual manner was different for us, but we actually kind of took advantage of it. My wife and I absolutely love traveling, so we bought an Airstream and we kind of just started working virtually. I mean, we spent 3 weeks in Breckenridge, we've gone to Alabama area, we've taken it kind of all over and had an absolute great time. And I mean, and even Lake Grapevine, we'd set up shop there and just hang out. So the whole thing was very, very fluid, and my wife's got a level head on her shoulder, so it was easy to kind of work through it with her. But yeah, it was just, I think everybody had to experience it a little bit differently. And I mean, like you and I, our lunches would go for 3 and 4 hours because there was nothing else to do. Yeah, we just kind of hang out and sit and talk about absolutely everything. And then as well, the work climate was very, very different. I mean, us both being in, new business development, you want to be really sensitive of what's happening to other people and how their businesses are being impacted. That was one of the hardest things for me is the month of March. As you know, I've got a lot of restaurant clients and different groups like that, and I'm having calls and from CFOs and all these different groups that have 5,000, 10,000 employees, and they're trying to figure out what I'm hearing and what we're doing and yada, yada, yada. And one of the coolest pieces was actually how our CEO, Steve Beauchamp, handled the pandemic. I mean, he came out literally week one prior to shutdown and started releasing videos of saying, hey, this is where the organization is at. This is what we're feeling. This is what we're doing. This is how we're reacting to it. And in being a virtual employee of a virtual company, it really it gave such a great peace of mind to hear from him every single week. But it also gave me a lot of time to really look at other stuff. And I mean, you mentioned the trash in the dumpster company. My brother's a home builder, and it was kind of like, well, let's start something on the side. Let's start moonlighting something. And
I remember asking you, like, trash?
Yeah.
Really? Like, and dumpsters? Like, what's the thought process behind that? You were like, it's a common denominator.
Yeah.
Everybody has trash.
It's that was as simple as it got. We kind of talked through different ideas and so forth, and we was like, it's not going anywhere. And the construction industry was absolutely blowing up. We sold the company 2 months ago. The new owners are doing an absolutely awesome job. So it was a fun thing to have that kind of like opportunity that I probably wouldn't have had because I had so much time to sit at home
Sure.
and just think, I mean, we started, due to our love of the RV experience, started developing an RV park. And so it just allowed us to actually slow down and kind of like reconsider the entire, I guess, our entire life kind of style thing. And then at the same time, start raising a child. So yeah, it was interesting.
It's been an interesting 2.5, 3 years, whatever the time is now.
Mm-hmm.
So, but you bring up new kids and having a kid born during the pandemic and dealing with that. And I remember you freaking out about your test and what are the results going to be, and I have to wait 3 days. Am I going to be able to join my wife in the room and all that? But one of the things that you and I talked about off the podcast, and we wanted to talk about it here, was men's mental health, and somewhat particularly on postpartum. And I read an article from UT Southwestern from a doctor there that talked about 1 in 10 men experience postpartum depression, and it brought me back to when Christian was born. I probably did have a little bit of depression, postpartum depression, but we had also bought a business before that. So I was in business mode and just waking up at 5 a.m. every day or earlier than that, actually, and working, coaching. And it was just, it wasn't, I never got any time to actually process that depression piece. And I think a lot of men are like that as well. And this is obviously just pure opinion of that article. I'm pretty sure it's higher than 10%, than 1 in 10. We just won't admit it as men. Like, I'm dealing with depression. I dealt with depression right before Christian was born. Having to resign my job and being unemployed for 2 months and having a kid on the way. It's a lot that it takes. So tell me about your experience, how you've handled it. Like I said, I didn't really handle it when I had mine, but I know how I handle depression now, and I'll go over that in a minute. So tell everybody a little bit.
Yeah, I think, I mean, the biggest for us is it hit my wife really, really hard. And you hear about the whole, what is postpartum, blah, blah, blah. It's not going to affect you because it doesn't really exist and it doesn't really affect anyone at all. And I think, like you said, it's not really, I don't know if it's even depression as much as it's anxiety, it's stress, it's a life change. I mean, a woman's body alone goes through so many chemical changes within those 9 months. And then even post the actual pregnancy, the body has been producing all these hormones, and then it shifts and it produces different hormones and all this stuff. And I mean, in the sense of fitness and in the food and the nutrition and so forth, you start getting off whack with any chemical inside of your body, and things are going to actually change. So I think it's really and I've talked to a lot of friends that kind of in the same boat of like they go into having their first kid, and it doesn't really, I feel like, hit a man until the kid is there, right? Within the first,
it's not growing inside of us.
We don't see anything. Nothing's changing about us. All we know is our wives' bodies are changing, or our partners' bodies are changing, kind of stuff.
Well, there is some research that shows that our bodies also go through a hormonal change while our wives are going, or the mom is going through changes as well. So.
Yeah, I saw one that said on the chemical reaction within guys is testosterone massively drops if you have a boy. So it's an old animalistic instinct, so you don't kill the threat that's coming to you.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and then that when you have a girl, your testosterone actually spikes
to protect.
And so there's so much going on from a hormonal perspective on both sides, but then you throw in the pandemic we were dealing with and the instability inside of work. And I think it was more after the fact that I looked back and I was like, holy shit, I was like on the verge of like a breakdown. Like, I mean, an anxiety attack. I wasn't sleeping because the kid doesn't sleep. It's a myriad of things. And one of the best things that started really heavily working for me was getting back centralized. My wife and I actually started with basically a therapist during the pregnancy.
Yeah.
We were stuck at home. There's nothing else to do. And really it was to kind of work on our communication to make sure that as we're bringing in a new human into the world that we're aligned. Because if we're not aligned, we can't have separating opinions or different mindsets when it comes to that.
You have to be on the same page.
Yeah, and so when we were talking with this therapist, and it actually was more after the fact that I realized it, she gave this analogy of staying like a street light, red, yellow, green kind of style thing. And you wear a whoop, I wear a whoop. We're obsessed with our whoops, and our whoops keep us
It's data.
It's data.
We love data.
I get my stats, I get my facts on it. But it shows that you're keeping your body in a red level, a yellow level, a green level, and you really want to stay inside of this green level. And so once I kind of realized what was happening in the overall stresses of everything, I started making a really, really conscious effort on this is going to be okay. You're fine. Kind of breathe through the thing. And it wasn't until you're kind of like on the outside of, like you say, when you're on the outside of depression, on the backside of it, you're like, oh man, I wasn't in a good spot.
That was dark.
Yeah, there was dark in there. I didn't realize how bad it got. But a couple of months into my son, he had extreme colic. He wasn't sleeping. He was spitting up everywhere. It was a very, very stressful time.
Yeah, I think I told you when you were going through it. Christian went through the same thing.
Yeah,
same thing. We weren't sleeping. He wasn't eating. He had colic.
It's horrible. It's a horrible experience.
Yeah. Like you can't figure out why your baby's crying.
Yeah, and you're like, why in the world would anybody sign up for this? This sucks. It's not fun. And so, I mean, it was just little bitty things. We started walking every single morning, started doing a lot more yoga, started doing a lot more kind of mental strengthening and those type of pieces, made sure your diet was on order, made sure, kind of cut back on the alcohol, which was
tough to do during the pandemic.
Yeah,
we had nothing else to do.
Yeah,
those 3-hour lunches that you talked about, there's a lot of alcohol involved with it too. We were working. There was nothing else to do. So why not have a drink and continue working?
Exactly. So I think my biggest encouragement is the more I've talked to other men, and I've talked to other men about like how they've experienced the pregnancy and post-pregnancy and so forth, is that it's very, very a lot more common than I think anybody gives it credit. But at the same time, like, we should be able to understand why it's happening. I mean, it is a massive, massive change. It's a massive, massive stressor. And you throw the pandemic on top of that. You throw, your partner's hormones all over the place. I think guys should be a little bit more comfortable with saying, like, I'm not okay right now. So,
no, I agree 100%. I think to add on to that, don't just jump into the pharmacological side of a solution and say, hey, I need to get on something. And like you said, you took a walk, so you're outside in nature. You're getting vitamin D. Oh, what was that? Data showing that vitamin D helped during the pandemic?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're tackling two things at once. And, just with the exercise and changing and creating your hormones through exercise as well as through nutrition, those help plenty with mental health. And I like I said, I didn't really handle the stress and the depression of having a newborn very well. Like I said, Christian went through the same thing. Your son went through, and on top of that, he was allergic to breast milk. He was allergic to regular milk. We had to buy EllaCare, which is like, it's just pure amino acids. It's the most hypoallergenic formula you can buy.
Jeez.
I would be freaking out right now if I had Christian during this formula crisis, and not knowing, because I mean, again, I apologize to the person out there, but I've yelled at a pharmacist or two because we had to get his formula through the pharmacist, and there was 2 occasions where they forgot to order it, and I yelled at them and said, "Now my kid can't eat. Thanks, wonderful," and that yelling was able to produce formula because they got another case from another pharmacy that was close by that wasn't using it. So having to handle that on top of the pandemic and on top of going back at it, like I feel like I never got an opportunity to really sit down or evaluate my mental health and say, hey, I am at a bad place right now or a dark place right now. How am I going to handle this? Outside of prescription drugs, let's tackle that. Let's look at it. So now I know, hey, I need to exercise. I need to work out right. I need to get out in nature and get some sun and have a great time. And that handles my mental health the majority of the time. And, different things that I do as well to decompress is, one, we've talked about this before. It's stupid now as a homeowner how much I've gotten into the lawn and doing lawn work and, fighting the crabgrass and now the heat. And, it's one thing after another, but to me, it's such a mind-numbing task where I don't have to think about everything. When for my job, I'm thinking constantly, and I'm a thinker in general. So to have that time to kind of decompress and slow the mind down and not think, and whatever other people's opinion of the other way I decompress too is I will sharpen my knives, and I will also clean my guns, and it's again a mind-numbing task. And it's something I've done, thousands of times, and it's fun. It's just repetitive, and I don't have to think about anything. So it's different tasks like that too. But I mean, you mentioned doing yoga. It's physical, but also it's not a high coordination and agility activity.
That's coming from somebody that doesn't do yoga.
Well, I mean, I'm not sprinting or I'm not jumping. I don't have a ball or a puck to look at. And yes, yoga is difficult. I've done it several times. I have to do hot yoga because I am not flexible naturally. So I need that heat to get me flexible. So tell me a little bit about what do you do to decompress and level out your mental health?
Yeah, so the green thumb thing, you've been to my house, you know how many flowers, how many planters. My wife makes fun of me because I just have planters everywhere. I'm always experimenting with plants and how they grow. It's just something I enjoy, and that was actually one of the best things for me during the actual pandemic and everything was just watching flowers grow. And I know that sounds so dumb, but time was passing so slow during the pandemic and so fast at the exact same time that, I mean, you're on my Instagram. I posted pictures of the postman showing up every single day.
Yeah,
of like
that was hilarious.
The world's still moving, right? And then pictures of my flowers of like stuff is still growing, stuff is still happening, change is happening, growth is happening, and growth is good. And so that was a huge piece for me, which sounds so dumb, but taking an actual seed, putting it into the ground, watering it, and wait. Because you can go out and you can buy your flowers. You can go out and buy your plants. You can plant them in the ground and you can have instant satisfaction. Or you can grow it from a seed. And to me, during the pandemic and even post-pandemic and even today, I really, really focus on that from a mental perspective. Is I can't expect to have a 100-year-old oak tree in my front yard until it takes 100 years for that oak tree to grow. And to me, it's really getting down to that very minute piece of the seed and getting it into the ground and watering it and taking the time, seeing the sprout, getting that plant actually growing, and then getting to see the flower and getting to see the actual result of it. So that's just kind of something I've done, and it's been, I mean, you can come to my house anytime and see an absolute ton of flowers. Bought land in Oklahoma, plan to grow more flowers and so forth. So it's that understanding of instant satisfaction doesn't have to happen, but at the same time, putting in the time and watching that.
No, and I think it's great, and kind of a theme that I'm seeing, and what you described is what I was really hoping a lot of people would get out of the pandemic and doing that as well, which the two pieces for me was, patience and consistency. Mm-hmm. So you were patient with that seed, going into a seedling and growing and growing and growing into the flower or plant that you wanted, and then you were patient with it. So you knew it was going to take time, and that's a great lesson, period, for our kids is things don't happen overnight. I know I have very stern conversations with Christian about this, with ice hockey or anything else that he's tackling. Like, hey, you're not going to be great at it from day one.
You shouldn't be. And if you're good at something day one, it's probably not that hard to do. Right?
Oh, no, absolutely. I mean, I think a lot of people that watch the podcast and know me, I learned how to ice skate 9 months ago, and I'm playing in an ice hockey tournament this weekend. And there was a comment that Christian's mom made after he got done with the practice. It was about his performance during that practice and how she feels he just doesn't have the drive for it. And he's a complex kid. He needs a lot of attention, but he's 8 still at the end of the day. So I think usually when kids get driven and obsessed, it's 10 years old. Is when I remember me being 10 years old, and that's when it clicked for me with baseball. But she made a comment about, me being a natural athlete and, her working really hard, and how did that not mesh with our kid? And I sat there and I thought, I'm a little offended that you called me a natural athlete. And she was like, why are you offended? I was like, because you ignored all the work that I did before to get me to where I'm at now to be a natural athlete. Like, yes, I've learned ice hockey in 9 months, and now I'm playing in a tournament and it's fun. But I think she ignored that consistency of being that 10-year-old that would wake up at 6 o'clock on a Saturday and go take batting practice,
get your reps
and then
in,
field and get my reps in. So it's that 10,000 hour rule that Malcolm Gladwell talks about. I've done those 10,000 hours in just physical fitness, period. I mean, I started truly training, like weightlifting, when I was 12. So I remember my dad taking me to GNC and buying the max builder and the big 10-pound jug. It always makes me think of Cartman from South Park when he was buying his protein powder, because that's how big the jug was. So that's one thing I really credit my father for, is teaching me the patience and the consistency of working at something to really master it and be better at it. And he was here over the weekend for Father's Day, and he helped me do some stuff around the house that I just needed an extra hand at doing. And he had taught me already, and just talking to him again, he was kind of reminding me. He also has a green thumb, and we were talking about it over the weekend. He now has 50 trees that he's planted in his backyard.
Wow.
And he's like, yeah, I know, because I know it's 50 because I counted them the other day. He's like, I have X amount of peach trees, and I have plum tree, a fig tree. I was like, who are you?
Yeah, right.
we didn't have this many trees when we grew up, but it's, again, something that he's gotten into. And, I asked him why he got into it too. And he said pretty much the same thing you did, is getting to watch it grow and going out there. It was a way for him to decompress. And these are my words of him decompressing. He's 2 generations away from me, in a generation that doesn't talk about men's mental health. So he talks about it in his own way. I'm like, okay, he's just recovering from the day.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a man that's
worked.
Okay. Yeah, that's worked since he was 18, and he's 64 now.
Yeah.
So going in the backyard and taking care of his trees and bushes and other plants that he's grown are great, and he takes pride in it. And he actually told me he named a few of the trees after his grandkids. Like, that one's for Christian, that one's Zola, that one's Zion. I was like, oh, you name your trees? And he's like, yeah, it's just fun. I'm like, oh, okay. So,
well, one of my favorite quotes is, and it's a Greek proverb or an Indian proverb or whatever the actual origin is of it, is that a society grows great when the society plants trees for whose shade they'll never sit under. And similar to what your dad's doing is
that's
kind of
beautiful,
like,
man.
is how I plan to raise my kids is you may not see an instant result, and I hope you don't see an instant result, but I hope you think so far down the road that you know somebody's going to need shade down the road, right? And if you read the book like The Giving Tree, a very simple book, it's the same concept. And I think that's a responsibility that we have as parents is to show kids, hey, we need to plant trees, we need to plant plants, and we're kind of tangent on this thing, but that's important to me as well, is to think ahead in the future. I mean, if I can teach my kids anything, I want to teach them to think through everything, think long term. Don't think too much about today. Don't think directly about tomorrow. Think about 3 years out. Think about 5 years out. Think about 10 years out. And it's a lot easier to do at our age, but you look back 10 years ago and you go, God, I could have done quite a few things different, and I probably have different results today.
10 years ago, I wouldn't have known what to say on this podcast, or here's where I see myself in 5 years and 10 years, but now I plan for the future down the road, just like you said, and it's, showing Christian how to do that, and, just doing that in other aspects outside of planting trees and plants. And I mean, it's just an analogy for life in general. Like, you're trying to help out other people. It's why I'm very philanthropic, and I show Christian that. I mean, I'm on the local board for St. Jude, and, we are proud here in Dallas that we consistently raise the most amount of money for St. Jude out of any city that has any event. And last year, we raised $2.5 million, $2.3 million. And this year we're shooting for 2.5. So anyone listening out there, you're welcome to donate to help us get to that 2.5 million. It's a great event to really see how philanthropic Dallas is. And that's what I've loved about the DFW Metroplex. Growing up in College Station and seeing everything that everyone does for the university, I've seen that here in DFW for nonprofit organizations that they really believe in. Yeah. And, that was one of the topics you and I talked about over the pandemic. How do we start a 501c3? Yeah. And what could we do? And we tossed around several different ideas, and unfortunately nothing came to fruition. But it's, constantly thinking about things like that. And like you said, during the pandemic, we all had nothing but time. Yeah. And thinking about ideas. And I think that's, that was one of the reasons I started the podcast, is that, I had this concept. I had read a book. I had an idea. How am I raising my kid? And, I would discuss it with you and the other dads that I knew, like, hey, what are you doing? What did you deal with this? And what's funny is that conversation came up the other day with Augie's issue at school, and I was like, Christian had that same issue at school when he was in kindergarten, and it was just like, here's how we handled it. And it's just like, oh, okay, so this is nothing I should worry about. No, it's nothing you should worry about at all. So it's funny that I always view things like that and what we're doing as informal education, and it's that. I think I've said it a few times. It's that generational transfer of knowledge, and in my head too, wealth, because knowledge is wealth. Yeah. So transferring that to you, to Christian, to your kids and their kids, that's going to be that tree that we're planting. That's shade for our family down the road. And now thinking about it in my head, that's probably why they call it a family tree. Yeah, is you should have shade for the rest of your family. Yeah.
No, and I mean, I'm glad you bring up like the philanthropy aspect of it, because I mean, that's something I really want to drive into our kids as well. And my wife and I just literally had a discussion about this week. And what does that look like? Like, what does philanthropy look like? And what do you want? Like, and there's so much out there, and there's so much hate in philanthropy at the same time. And that's something that like I've been dealing with a lot of these nonprofits, and what do I want to do, and where do I want to put my money, and where do I want to spend my time, and it really boils down for me, and what I want to instill in our kids is the love of humanity, right? The love of your common man, right? You look at the state of Texas, and it's like, hey, you're a Texan, take care of Texans. That's what you do. It's not take care of white people, take care of black people, take care of Hispanic people, take care of this. It's not segmented like that. It's take care of your fellow human being. And so I really hope that's something that we can drive into the kids, even with St. Jude and Big Brothers Big Sisters, where I think it's actually where
that's actually how we met.
Yeah, first
Big
met.
Brother Big Sister.
Is those kind of style organizations that kind of set everything aside, set religion aside, set race aside, and say, hey, let's start working on humanity as a whole, and that's really what I want to drive into them. So,
No, and I'm glad you brought that up, because that's something I constantly talk to Christian about. And raising a kids are as simplistic minded as anyone
they're
can
idiots.
be.
I mean, they're really unprogrammed computers. At the end of the day.
They are idiots, and that's using idiot in the proper term.
Yeah.
They don't have the knowledge to think any differently.
Correct.
So and trying to describe things to Christian is why, even in my job, I keep things simple. I've said it a million times. I'm an overeducated idiot. So I like to talk in analogies, and I like things to be simple. And I've talked to Christian about that several times. And I still remember when he was, 5 or 4, I can't remember now. One of my best friends visited, and we went to dinner. And Christian has this almost eidetic mind, where most people refer to it as just having a great memory and being able to remember things and taking a snapshot of it. And we passed by the same restaurant, and his comment was, "Oh, that's where we went with your brown friend." And I was like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, your brown friend that was in town a couple weeks ago." And I was like, "Oh, L.A.?" And he's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Oh." He just sees color, the literal color of his skin. He's not being he doesn't have a racist bone in his body. Still to this, and it's an identifier for him. So I was totally okay with that, and I was fine with it, because he was viewing it as a human, but he was trying to describe it. So that's how we take things. Period. And one of the main reasons I get involved with St. Jude was they don't see race, color, gender, ethnicity, or even citizenship at St. Jude, because recently we took in quite a few Ukrainian refugees and continued their chemotherapy. So I love St. Jude because not a single person has ever received a bill from St. Jude for any of their services whatsoever. Even the hotel bill, they don't get it. The food's covered. So I'm always going to give to St. Jude. I'm going to help them raise as much money as possible, because I believe in that, especially since
donate out the link below.
Yeah. Can we put a link right here? and one of the reasons behind that is working in healthcare. That is absolutely crazy and unheard of, that no one receives a bill, especially for cancer treatment. And St. Jude is also doing cancer research. So they're the leaders in both of those, and they don't charge a single dime. And the story behind them being founded was awesome as well. So I've actually been to St. Jude and done a tour, and I'm not afraid to say I actually cried in their chapel. Like it was so heart touching and heartwarming, where I just thought about how Christian and I pray for sick people and sick babies every night. And I thought, okay, this is why I give money here. Like if it can evoke that reaction and that emotion out of me, I can only imagine if my son or daughter were there, and all I had to worry about was being a parent during that time. And I thought about my time with Christian at Arkansas Children's Hospital. He didn't have anything major wrong with him, but I'd spend 2-3 hours each appointment there. And I thought, gosh, like that was a headache. Yeah. And nothing's really even extremely wrong with him. Imagine having to sit there for days on end while your child's going through cancer treatment. So that's the main reason we give to St. Jude.
I got punched in the face with that, a couple of weeks back when Augie had his breathing episode, and we had to rush to the ICU, and it was the hands down scariest moment I've had in my entire life. We've had family members go through cancer, we've got friends going through cancer. It's horrible. It sucks. But once it's your child, and once it's totally there in a first person basis, and you walk into the ICU and they're expecting you, and you don't sign any paperwork, and they just take your child and rush you into the back, like that's when you go, oh my God, this is real. And actually, as I was laying there with him, like as they were giving him all these breathing treatments, and we're going through this entire process, I'm like, I'm so happy that money and insurance is not something I'm thinking about at all right now. And I can't imagine what it would be like sitting there, like in the St. Jude situations
Sure.
of, I got my child's dying, and my legacy's dying, and everything I've wanted, or we've been building, and so much time has gone into this individual for them to be dying and not having the assistance that you needed to get the help, to help them through the entire process. So I love what you guys are doing there, and so keep up the good work on it. But back to what you said about your friend LA, I think it's very important of how we as parents and as fathers and so forth, how we approach the world, because they're only going to replicate exactly what we do. I heard somebody say, "Hey, if you're an asshole before having a kid, you're going to be more of an asshole after having a kid. And you're gonna raise an asshole, yeah. Right?" And I actually took that like really to heart. And so even we've talked about it, it's like discipline. Like how do you deal with discipline? Like I mean, I've got a idiot in the sense of like an unprogrammed yeah. computer that he reacts to how I react, right? And the other day, like I'm really trying not to do like physical discipline on it, right?
Sure. I've never spanked Christian to this day.
Dude, that's awesome. My son is a carbon copy of me, and I want to be like, I know exactly what you're thinking.
Well, and I know that about Christian. He's a carbon copy of me, mm-hmm. and corporal punishment never worked on me, but sitting down and telling me you're disappointed in me, mm-hmm. oh my goodness, like my whole world fell apart. Yeah. I would do anything you wanted me to do after that. So I figured out early on that was him. So we have a lot of conversations.
And that's kind of where I was going with the whole thing is I look back on my childhood and I was like, spanking, so I can go do that, and all I get is a spanking. Fine.
Yeah.
See you in 15 minutes.
I've been doing my squats. It's not gonna hurt.
Yeah, big deal. But it is, and you talk to some people, and obviously, I mean, I'm not the most experienced father yet. It's going to take years and years and years of doing that, but I do think there is a level of mental discipline or like mental understanding that you can actually implement into your child. And I tell Augie all the time, hey, that's not how we act. And I actually took that from right out of my own dad's book. He used to tell us, hey, remember who you represent. And I was like, shut up, Dad. Like,
shut up, Dad.
Yeah, I don't.
But now you use that.
Yeah. Remember who you are. Hey, you're right. And he would say these in so many different manners. And man, I mean, my dad giving me a spanking growing up was the absolute joke. It would be like
don't do that again.
Don't do that again. But I think so much more often about how he said is like, hey, that's not how we act. Think about who you are, and I've seen how you react with Christian on so many manners, and your demeanor and your attitude and everything is very even kill. I mean, think about the time we were at the restaurant, and he face planted into the table and starts bleeding everywhere.
Oh gosh,
your reaction was
that,
just
yeah.
Christian, we shouldn't have done that. I told you not to lean back on your chair, and there's blood everywhere, and you take him, and you didn't. Your blood pressure didn't rise. You didn't scream. You didn't get angry. You didn't start cussing at the kid and stuff like that. So to me, I really want to implement that, as a dad, and try to keep that even kill as much as possible, and bring in more of a loving discipline as opposed to
I agree with you.
Corporate.
And again, I think the resounding theme and what you just described was patience and consistency. Like,
and it's harder to do on our side.
Yeah, I've always done that.
Yeah.
And growing up with our fathers being close in age and them growing up the way they grew up, yeah, it was corporal punishment. It was, I'm just gonna beat it into you.
Yeah, right.
And now it's like, I need to talk to this kid and talk it into him and let him understand that. And I've had conversations with him before at restaurants of, you want to come here again, you're going to behave. This is a nice restaurant. We don't lay down. We don't kick things. We don't play with all of our utensils. And, to your point of your dad saying, well, remember who you represent. You're right. We don't act that way. I've told Christian that a few times with some things that he wanted to do. And I ask him, what do we not do? He's like, well, we don't quit. It's like, why? And the response is because Lopez's don't quit. And, having to reaffirm that with what your father said of remember who you are. And it's really building that legacy or shade, if you will, on that family tree hey, these are family values that, maybe just started with us, and we're correcting what our fathers did or our grandfathers did. But also, here's what I want to show you down the road when you have kids. Mm-hmm. And Christian's 8, almost 9, and he already talks about being a dad and having kids. And when I have kids, I'm like, okay, good. It's sinking in. You're grasping my thought process and what I'm trying to divulge to you and teach you, and it's been great. And to see him really, really thrive in an environment with friends and family, he's grasping on, and I can only hope that continues as I get older and he gets older, that we continue to have that relationship.
And it's our responsibility, to keep constantly instilling that thing. And like you said, staying patient. I mean, they react to our reactions. And so it's so much more work, I feel like, on my end. Yeah. And there's been times where I'm like, Katie, take him. I'm done. I'm going outside. I gotta go water plants for a little bit.
I gotta go water the plants.
But it's possible, and I think that's the most encouraging thing I've seen so far with Augie and how he reacts to things. Like we say, eyes, no hands. He will say, eyes, no hands. And he just won't touch something. And I'm like, man, he's 20 months old, and he's been doing that since 12 months old.
Yeah.
There is a way to do, I don't know if it's soft discipline. I don't know, like, even how to put the actual label on it, but it's a way to keep kids in line, discipline a child, and not have that physical attack actually happen. So
no, and I think what I'm hearing is it's just that consistency with it of, whether he's behaving or misbehaving, you're going to have that conversation with him and talk to him and try to teach him. And they are sponges. They absorb everything, even our bad habits.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, one thing I love watching your videos of is when you were playing the guitar, and then Augie got a guitar, and he was starting to try to play it. It's just like, okay, they see it, and they see that we receive so much joy out of it, and that's why we do it. It's not because we had to do this. We had to, play a guitar. We had to play the piano, video games, whatever it may be. For me, I love music. We both share that. And we got to see Gary Clark Jr. together, which was awesome at House of Blues. And now that I think about it, I remember that was his first concert
his
back
first show
out of the pandemic.
Yeah.
And, even he said, I don't really know how to react.
I don't know what to do.
I don't know what to do.
You're kind of like a practice
He's like,
here.
I'm just going to play. I'm like, all right, just play. So it's fun to pass things on like that to Christian as well. So are there other things besides, music and your green thumb that you want to pass on to Augie and
yeah, I mean, I think there is. I mean, I know stuff is going to happen. I think that's one of the pieces that I've kind of taken into fatherhood is kind of let it happen. You ebb with the flow. Like,
sure.
It's a human. Like, I mean, they're both humans. And I think one of the coolest things I've seen with Augie is once we had Sienna, our daughter, is everybody's like, oh my God, how is he going to react? And I'm like, still thinking, he's going to react how we react, right?
Yeah.
And
with love.
With love. And the cutest thing is the kid just loves his sister. And anything happens,
I see it all the
he
time.
hears her cry, and he's like,
what are we going to do,
everybody
Mom,
stop, come on, guys. He rallies the troop up. He gets her pacifier. If her milk falls out of her mouth or something, he'll, and he'll run over and help put it back in. But one of the coolest things was the other morning is he wakes up every single morning and asks, where's Sissy? And so we all call her Sissy. And so we always take him into his room or wherever she's at and let him see it. And he started doing this thing called kisses. And he'll every single day, this kid just kisses his sister, rubs on her head, like sits beside her, and he wants to hold her. And he's wanted to hold her since she was really young. So, I mean, when she was born, he was 16 months, 17 months old.
Yeah.
And so day one, he's like, give it to me.
I want to hold her.
Yeah.
You're like,
this is mine. This is mine. Like, I want to be really nervous. Like, we were nervous about, giving it to him. But I think it's going back to also how Katie and I reacted to the kids of like, hey, let's take a soft approach. Let's take a very loving approach. Let's show them that we're in love with each other because we're a team more than we're parents. I guess maybe it's kind of about even, but it's not us and them. It's us, and then it's us and us, right? As the family as a whole. Yeah. So that piece I want to keep mentally even, like we're not going to get insane. You can have your anger, and my wife's a lot better about letting him act out a little bit more than I am. Like my immediate reaction of him acting out is, "Oh, like,
No, we don't do that.
Don't do that." And my wife's like, "It's okay to have emotions," and I'm like, "Oh, no, it's not." So that's been the coolest thing, is to see how he reacts to her based on our reactions with her and with him, and letting him learn, because like we said, he's still a
No, and
computer.
I've always loved to see that interaction between you and Katie, on that, you're a great team in that sense of you balance each other out, and you even work for the same company.
Yeah.
So how do you handle that with working for the same company as your wife and then having kids at home as well? How does it all work?
I mean, I'm a very anti-societal norm guy, right? And so there's so many elements of it sounds horrible, but like that she's even working, and that there's a societal norm of like, hey, it's okay that a mom works. It's okay that a dad works. There's no contingency around. There's no thought process or social pressure for me to quit my job and stay home. Why?
Yeah, I've always said it doesn't matter who the breadwinner is. It matters that there's bread.
Right. That's a great way to put it. And so there was nothing that crossed our minds of. There's probably more me crossing my mind of like, I'll take off some time. In reality,
let's go golf today.
Without the pandemic, I probably would have. I probably would have said, hey, we waited to have kids. I mean, we were married for almost 7 years before we had kids, and we intentionally did that so we could travel and we could get to know each other and we could fall in love and we could make sure that it's going to be a really good marriage and stay together. But I was at a point when we found out we were having Augie that I'm like, I don't mind. Like, I mean,
I don't mind.
I'll take some time off. This kind of sounds fun. It kind of sounds enjoyable.
No, I mean, and you're blessed to work for a company that gives paternity leave.
Yeah.
So, which is one thing that needs to be normalized, is dad's taking time off when the kid's born.
Well, it's even. Do you have it? It's asking so much of a family to roll into that, and assuming that everybody has the exact same resources as another family, right? So often you hear of a mother-in-law that moves in, or a mother that moves in for 3, 6, 9 months, and that's supposed to be normal. Well, what if you don't have that? Like, right? Sure. Like you've got a father that's supposed to be there for 24 hours, and the kid's born. Your wife's still in full blown recovery. You've got this new thing that doesn't sleep. Nobody sleeps and everything. And better get back to work, right? You better get back to that steel presser.
Yeah, no, and like you said, we work in new business development. Mm-hmm. So if you're not working, you're not developing that new business,
you're not making money,
which means you don't get paid. And I follow this account on Instagram called Sales Humor, and one of the things that I laughed at the other day has nothing to do with being a parent, but he was texting his boss. He's like, "Hey, I sold that big deal," and the response from the boss was, "Great, do it again."
Right.
That's our job. So.
Right.
If you're not there, if you're not taking care of your mental health, and like you said, society expects the dad to go right back to work.
Yeah.
And on the same platform too, they expect the mom to go back to work after taking 8 weeks off.
Maybe 8 weeks.
Maybe 8 weeks.
And so the whole idea around the paternity leave, I mean, I'm an advocate supporter of it. I wish companies would do it and allow the flexibility, especially now in the virtual life that we all completely live.
Sure, we could take it and still work.
I can take it and still work. Honestly, it's helped. I know it helped Katie. It helped me to be able to like, hey, I gotta get my brain back going. Like I've got to do a couple of things. I just got to progress a little bit in different manners. And so, to any business owners out there, really dive into that mindset of paternity leave and supporting families and how they can support it. If you don't want to get paternity leave, maybe put some money aside for a nanny. Why not pay for nanny help for 6 months of the, for post-pregnancy or something like that.
No, that's one thing my company did early on during the pandemic. They actually provided funding for daycare.
That's awesome.
They realized, hey, now we're at home, but we still need to
and
work.
Schools are shut down.
Yeah, the schools are shut down. Yeah. We still need to work, so the kids have to go somewhere. So, I love that my company did that for me. I wish they would have kept it going because there is that cost of daycare and it's expensive. And luckily, I have a great job and I get paid well, but there's others within our company that don't, or they're just that they can't afford the kids that they have, so they're trying to balance the whole thing. And that kind of brings me to the next thing I wanted to talk about was, you're one of the most financially savvy people that I know, and you don't have a degree in it. You're just like, oh, I don't even work in that industry. But it goes back to the way your mind works, and you're planning 5-10 years from now. And like we said, you started the dumpster business, and then now you're looking at developing an RV park as well. And what's the thought process behind that when it comes to finances that you want to teach your kids?
I think the most fundamental piece of it is stability and consistency. So I heard somebody once say, and I honestly don't even know who said it, is overnight success takes about 15 years. And I heard it at a very young age, and for some reason that just kind of got stuck in my brain. My dad's an entrepreneur, was not that successful of entrepreneur in a lot of manners, which is perfectly fine. There's a lot of external circumstances that happen on everybody, but at a young age, I had to start paying for things. I started working at 14 years old, and one of the things my parents constantly said was, "Hey, make sure you have a savings. Make sure you're putting money aside for these type of things." So. When I was real young, I opened 3 bank accounts. I mean, I put in a checking account, which would be my actual expenditure. I put a bills account together, which was covering cell phone and insurance and stuff like that. Then I put a savings account. Still to this day, 20 plus years later, I have still those exact same 3 accounts. And I have it set up the exact same way. I have all of my bills pulled out of a single account. I never have to worry about missing a bill unless a direct deposit gets screwed up or something like that. And little bitty fundamental practices like that really helped. And then starting to understand money, right? You've read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Most people, if you haven't, you should. You should take a lot of responsibility around your finances. I think that's one of the most important pieces, and it's one of the longest impactful pieces in your entire life. But it's the quickest to disappear, and it's the hardest to recover, right? If you don't start saving 10 years ago, you're not going to have 10 years worth of savings today. It's just going into that mindset of saying, hey, how can I make money? How can I make my money work for me? And how can I make that money work for more money? And it's not money. It's not to be rich. To me, there is not a dollar amount that I have in my head that I'm trying to get to. And then once I reach that, I'm done. Matter of fact, I've actually already reached what I wanted to do earlier than when I did it. And I'm like, this doesn't change.
You just push the goal.
I just changed the goal. To me, it's security. To me, it's stability. To me, it's wanting to have the time to spend with my kids and not know, man, if I don't get this next commission check, I'm completely screwed. So it's understanding money, understanding the ins and outs of it, learning how to save, learning how to budget, learning how to grow money, learning how to grow finances, and know what finances result in, right? I'm not a hoarder of money. My wife would say I'm a hoarder of collectibles and stuff like that.
But I've seen your little man cave. I know you're a hoarder.
It's to be able to have the experiences. We've traveled a ton, an absolute ton, and a vacation to me is just as valuable as having $10,000 in the bank, because spending 2 weeks somewhere with your family or seeing another area of the world, that's more valuable than that actual tangible money. So
I would agree with you, and that's why I've tried to teach Christian about the value of money early on, and literally consistently emphasizing it and reinforcing it. And even 2 weeks ago, we went to our favorite donut shop, and donuts there aren't cheap. Like they're nice artisan donuts, and they're like $5 each.
Yeah.
And he didn't finish one of them. And I was like, buddy, I get upset when you do that. Why? And he's like, oh, it's okay, Dad. I took $5 out of my pocket and I tossed it in the trash. And I said, that's literally what you're doing. Mm-hmm. He goes, what? I was like, yeah, that donut cost $5. You just took $5 out of my pocket and threw it in the trash. Do I have $5? Yes, but I still don't like to throw money away. And I told him, I was like, we can't go to trips and do Universal, and we can't go to Hawaii if I'm wasting money and being dumb about it. So now he understands, like, oh, I can't waste money. And I'm like, look, you know how much you can eat order that
Yeah.
and be fine.
Yeah.
Be content with it.
No, I mean, to me, it's the value of money, and what's the point of money? My favorite line ever is Forrest Gump. The great Forrest Gump,
The great idiot,
the great idiot, right? Is he, in the movie? Everybody's seen it. He invests in some small fruit company that Lieutenant Dan tells him to invest in. Invest in it. Turns out to be Apple. He gets a check in the mail. He goes and takes it over to Bubba's mom, gives her a check in the mail, and he goes, "So, don't have to worry about money anymore." Well, that's one less thing to worry about. That's kind of in a weird manner how I've kind of always looked at it is money is only a tool for what you use it for, right? And it's like you can get to a point where it's one less thing to worry about. I mean,
no, absolutely.
$20 is $20 is $20.
It's a tool to grow that tree to provide shade.
Yep.
So
Exactly.
we're coming up on time, and I always like to end with one question, and that's if you were no longer here, what would you want your kids to know from you? What do you want to say to them?
Geez, I've had such a short time with them. If it was like right now, that I'd fight like hell to get back. I don't know who I'd have to talk to and whatever the afterlife looks like.
There's probably a deal to be made. With
Yeah,
somebody.
man. I'm going to be hustling until I get back here, so I can spend more time with them. I mean, if it was to happen tomorrow, I hope that they would like. I hope that they'd be able to, and we live in a cool society that allows you to see videos and photos. I mean, there's more videos and photos of me than my father in his entire almost 70 years existing, right? So they would get to experience who I was through a medium, podcast, stuff like this. But I really hope that they just kind of, they knew it was going to be okay, and were able to, I guess, stay strong, and be able to ebb and flow with life, and don't let life overtake them. And I don't know. I mean, man, it's a heavy question, especially with
I know
how
you,
young they
they're
are.
they're so young. But
Yeah.
I guess what's one thing you want them to know even later on in life that, hey, my dad taught me that.
I would probably say the number one thing is it's going to be okay, man. Like, stay consistent, put goals in front of yourself and achieve those goals. And once you put those goals in front of yourself and achieve them, put new ones. Stay hungry, stay foolish is what Steve Jobs says. I have that hanging in my office, and always have a thirst for knowledge, always have a thirst for education, and learn and understand arts and maths and sciences, and really plant trees. So yeah, it'd be hard as hell. I can't even actually.
No,
even
that's
think about
the
it.
perfect answer.
Yeah.
Great way to end the podcast as well. So,
Awesome.
Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thank you.
We're gonna go plant some more trees. Try to get our grass to grow in this heat in Texas.
Exactly.
So, like and subscribe, and we will be back in 2 weeks with another episode.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Thanks for joining Rad Dad Podcast, everyone. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next episode.